What is wisdom for you, and how do you look at being wise? What is it to be wise, and what is wisdom for you?
Uh, wisdom is a big word, really, and but I would say that it is the art and science of living experientially life, and therefore certain things that come to you from that experience, you can call it as the wisdom. Wisdom is really about being able to observe and being a witness and being able to see how it impacts you and how it impacts various systems. And basically, more simple ways of being is where the wisdom lies.
Hmm.
It's complicated stuff and very complex. So wisdom is finally in Hindi, you would say nichor. That's how I look at wisdom. And while you are calling it as the wisdom circle and therefore wanting something of that kind from me, I'm not too sure whether I can give pearls of wisdom to people, but yes, I I am who I am, and therefore share from that angle. Yes,
Hmm.
that's how I see wisdom as a process.
You said wisdom is a lot about being able to observe. One is you said living experientially, and the other you said is being able to observe the impact on yourself and on others. And I have seen you have one of the clearest perceptions amongst people I have met. Like perception in the sense almost like your lenses of seeing are very, I would say, very cleared up. You can see quite cleanly, pick up so
Yeah.
much data. So I was curious about how is it that you're able to observe minutely, and what is really the key to being able to observe in a detached way that you're saying, in a witnessing way.
So after words were lost because it froze, your brain froze.
Okay. Bad internet then. So let me repeat, Sushma, no problem, and you can let me know when it freezes again. So I was asking about perception. You said that wisdom is in observing the impact on yourself, uh, and I have seen you have very clear perception, or more clear than most people I have seen. I've seen you being able to pick the drop in the voice or just a movement of the eye, and it's amazing to see how clearly you perceive. So, what has helped you clear your perception so much that you're able to pick so much up? How?
Um, I think it is really the process of detachment itself, so that the self doesn't mess around and you're observing, and therefore brings some other kind of a lens. And it is also your being in touch with yourself fully, being aware of when some such messing around is happening, either about your own self or because that can blur the vision and the observation. Because that's when very strongly the biases can creep in without your knowledge, very unconsciously. So, so I think, and also the other aspect of is the intuition. How much is really listening to your intuition because you are seeing something. Is the reality that is in front of you, and there is some reality that you carry with yourself always. So to be able to see the reality that is unfolding in front of you clearly, you know, this awareness piece is extremely significant. And so therefore, um, just to be able to do some pure observation without bringing in any past or future into it.
Hmm.
Just as things are happening in front of you in the moment.
That sounds. Sorry, go ahead,
Yeah,
Sush.
it's very important aspect is the detaching of yourself, not being in love with something that you are doing, in the sense of how you are doing it. But being in love with what you are doing is important. That passion to see clearly and being aware if there is any other color that is coming in. Being able to shift. It's just as you are asking the question, I'm trying to uh, flow with it.
Sure, sure, sure. This almost sounds very Buddhist, very like detach from self and be present, be aware, sift from your own coloring and judgment. Uh, so have you relied on any wisdom traditions to build this awareness, or has it been innately natural? What has been your practice uh, that has honed this?
Yeah, I don't think I particularly follow any particular practices, uh, but I think these are only on my own that I do. And each of these practices has some very meaningful and significant processes involved. Uh, but as I have grown, I think I have learned to really trust my own flow, and that is what tells me uh, what's in front of me. Because otherwise, I can become, okay, this is the Buddhist thing that I'm doing, kind of stuff, and that itself can bring um, a kind of a shade to your vision. So then you're trying to look at it from one particular framework. And I think the frameworks are okay when you are learning, but when you want to be in the being, then uh, the frameworks uh, can interrupt the process. I mean, that's what I believe in. It's not that I've read somewhere or anything, but this is how I work.
So saying pick the framework, use it to learn, and then drop them away and deal with life in its raw form.
And you don't know which framework might come to you in the moment, and that seems like the appropriate thing to do. So this suddenly comes in because I have been into many kinds of branches of learning, and when suddenly something makes sense and I'm seeing something, but it's not deliberate, you know. So it's almost like intuitively it shows itself. Now it is up to me to listen to that or not. But I find that whenever I have listened to my intuition, that's when it has worked.
Yeah, I see you trust your intuition definitely way more than most of us, and I think that intuition also comes from such a rich experience. Sush, I was hoping to get some distinction on going with the flow, because going with the flow is something, it's become a phrase that's passed around all the time. Go with the flow, and many times, particularly with millennials, I see it as an excuse for lethargy. Sometimes it's like, even dead objects and branches and twigs go with the flow. So are you really with the flow, or are you how can you tell whether you're really with the flow, or are you being lazy, or it's not so. I mean, for someone like you, flow is so natural, easy, and emergent. I wonder whether uh, is there a distinction between laziness and being with the flow? How can you tell? How can you tell you're with the flow, and what is the role of planning then? Like how does being in the flow juxtapose with planning?
Yeah, so the role of planning to me is to discard it as soon as possible. Because so something else is emerging. What is the emergent reality? So sometimes the planning is going to be the antithesis. And therefore, if you're going to follow your plan and something new is emerging, so am I able to disconnect with my plan and detach from it and go after what is emerging? Okay, for example, I might have planned that this is what I'm going to do or whatever. Just a more or a rough plan, not as a detailed kind of stuff. And suddenly somebody in the group breaks down. And that was never in the plan because I was not doing anything which could have caused. But there's something happening to him as well or her, and something happening in that environment. Now, am I able to go with that flow and spontaneously play with it? Therefore, I have to have intense level of trust with myself, with the process, with the people around. And so, to me, going with the flow is really surrendering and not holding on, letting go. And because the moment you uh, have planned so well, then it's very difficult to let go because then you want to complete your agenda. So it becomes your agenda rather than the people that you're working with. It's not their agenda. So that's what I mean by going with the flow, to letting go, to surrender, to let things happen as they will, as they're supposed to happen. And I can only hold the space. I cannot control the space. So that's a myth that we, as a facilitator, can control because you are really facilitating whatever is ready to emerge. So, so my own ego has to take a totally backseat and be spontaneously really looking and taking the risk, whatever that may be. Does it,
And yeah, and sorry, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, does it make sense to you what I'm saying, or am I going somewhere else?
No, it definitely makes sense. And I want to bring it back also into the personal context, right? Into personal lives of people. So, this trusting and being spontaneous, and therefore honoring the emerging reality rather than what you have planned. I think that's what I'm hearing. So, that applied to personal life, would the same principles also apply to people's individual lives?
Yeah. So to me, simplicity is the real answer.
Okay.
You know, because simplicity can be very profound. To be able to articulate things in a simple way requires a lot of depth. That's something that I have found in Dr. Edgar Schein, the way I attended some of his programs and all that. That guy can say such deep stuff in simple sentence, simple language. Anybody can relate to. So to me, it is really, hence you use the word honoring, and with the honoring, it is really also valuing you know, the, the, the other. And, and then not with devaluing yourself, because that's where the equality really takes place, because you need to live it rather than. So,
Mm.
so therefore, in my listening, it's a very deep kind of process. And listening is not only at level one or two, but this listening is much beyond what a person is saying. So you are taking in the whole environment, and that's when you can go with the flow, because
Mm.
everything at the same time, all your senses are alive. Your, I am very sensuous in the moment. It's like even my hands sometimes are telling me something. So
Interesting. Very interesting. So to I think simplicity is one, and you said being also in touch with all your senses and listening very deeply as a prerequisite to flow. So what I'm hearing is not flow that is running from the mind, but running from reality, like flowing with reality, not flowing with your own thoughts or your mind or your constructs, but really flowing with where life is, and then using your senses to meet life where it is. And really playing from there. Uh, and yeah.
so I think my own vulnerability in the moment is is really part of my sensing. Because if something is impacting me in some ways, there is some clue to the mystery that is unfolding.
Hmm. And vulnerability, Sushma, for people who would not understand, how would you explain vulnerability?
What did you say? I didn't get it.
Vulnerability, for people who are not familiar with the term vulnerability, would you say more being honest, authentic, or how would you explain vulnerability?
To me, this word these days have become very common to be used. Um, but I think to understand vulnerability is really about whatever is happening to me, am I able to own it and be honest about it and straight? It's not, it's not a very rocket science, but basically it is a rocket science. It becomes a rocket science because um, there's so many layers within us that are operating, and so therefore, uh, on which level I block it, maybe my own fear. I don't know what could be emerging for me as well, because to me, in my vulnerability in me is also creating that space for others to be vulnerable. This as a facilitator, I think I am all knowing, and not to be able to say that I don't know what's happening just now, and you'll be surprised by the answers that you get from the system. So vulnerability is really about not only your, what is understood as vulnerability is only your emotions, and many times people think crying is a vulnerability, and so therefore they treat it as a weakness. To me, my vulnerability is my greatest strength.
Hmm.
It's like a clay, when it is wet, you can mold it into anything.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Vulnerability does, allowing all the senses to shape whatever is emerging.
Lovely. That's so lovely to hear, Sushma. Just the idea that vulnerability is like clay, and from there you can mold something. I think the melting and then the remolding. I think that sounds fascinating. Um, from here, I want to segue into what we were talking about as the topic of this talk. also, because you shared some of your secrets already about listening to intuition, about simplicity, about using all your senses, about vulnerability. And I'm sure all these fall into the ingredients that let you rock through the later years of your life. And yet, at the start of the talk, you had said that age is a number for you, or you looked at wisdom all across. So, I wanted to inquire a bit into your relationship with time and ages and years, and what keeps you so young.
Uh, it's an interesting question because so my granddaughter asked me, okay, tell me, Nani, how old are you really? I look at her and I say, today I'm 50 years old. She says, how can that be? Because my mother is older than you then. I say, yeah, because she lives her age, I live my age.
Right.
So, and to me, it is true for me that there are some days when I'm feeling like a 16-year-old. So the age is not determinant of anything for me, right from the beginning. So it is like, it's not as if in this age you have to wear these clothes, which is sometimes people think like that. And to me, it has always been spontaneously whatever I feel like doing, I want to do. It has nothing to do with what will people say. So that is something that I have defined always. What will people say? Let them say.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's not going to determine my identity. And fortunately for me, I also married a guy, who also operates like that. So, so both of us don't bother much about what people will say, and because people in any case are going to say something or the other. But
Right.
if your identity is based on whether they approve of it or they don't approve of it, and who the hell are these people? Whom are we talking about? Because this is like a huge black hole. And I think I got out of that even when I was in college. Because till college and even the university, I mean, like I grew up in Chandigarh and in Punjab University and all that. There your reputation and what people thought about you was very important as a girl. So, because a bad reputation could spread like a wildfire. So at that time, it bothered me. But I think as soon as I got out of the university and all, so some of the books that have impacted me in my ways. One is Ayn Rand. So her books really impacted me, as well as uh, Gone with the Wind. You know, so Scarlett O'Hara's whole way of being. Tomorrow is another day. It's something that these. Because I was an avid reader, I must have read all the classics by the time I finished my graduation, and poetry. So these things impacted me a lot in terms of just who am I and what do I want? How do I want to live? And so it's not as if I sat down and thought about these questions, but but when I look back today, I think uh, not having fears helped. So without knowing swimming, I could jump from the diving board on the very first day because everybody else was doing that. And I said that it was so exciting to go right up. It was like an Olympic size swimming pool. And I told the teacher that, I want to go there and jump. And she says, how did you do that? You don't even know swimming. I said, I don't know, but you will take me out because you are a good swimmer. And she looked at me and she says, okay, go up. She expected me. to go there, and everybody used to get frightened after going up there and to jump. So I went up, and she told me to put her my arms beside my body, and then I jump. Then when she says one, two, and three, okay. The moment she said one, I jumped. I didn't even wait for two and three. And sure enough, there were people inside the pool, and they pushed me, and I came. Because once you jump, once you are going to come out. And that's the time when, so the people pushed me, and I was out, and I started to learn swimming after that. So to me, I didn't have fear really. What will happen? My trust in that teacher whom I didn't even know was very high, that she's a good swimmer, that's why she's teaching people.
Hmm. Back to trust. Yeah.
She won't let me drown. So this trust piece is very key for whatever you believe, you see it. So if I start believing today that I am 70, I mean, like you are talking so many times about 70, I've never even thought about myself as 70.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Never struck me even. Okay, so it doesn't strike me because I have the same feelings and the same way of being and enjoying things, and so to me, nothing has changed. And so I take life as it comes. I don't have any expectations from life because I don't get into disappointments. But if I get something, then I'm very happy. I will
Hmm.
celebrate.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, so that's what this age difference is all created. It's a consensus reality,
Hmm.
the social reality that people at this age, this will happen. I know many of my colleagues in the world who are behavioral scientists. They're writing books at the age of 90, 95, and they're as lucid as any youngster would be, and they're still very curious.
Sure. Sure.
You know? So this curiosity, that's another thing that I really enjoyed with Dr. Uday Pare. He was very curious, apart from anything else. He was always wanting to know, okay, so Sushma, what are you really doing? What exactly is happening? And he was so keen to learn
Hmm.
from you, whatever you were doing. I think I've seen this process in many people um, who look ageless.
Curiosity. Hmm.
Yeah, curiosity and therefore the uh, courage to be yourself.
So curiosity and courage to be yours. There's several things you shared there, Sushma. So thanks for so many of those things coming together. I think all of that coming together is what uh, really adds up. I think seeing this as consensus reality, and really not caring much about what others think, and being curious and trusting. I think whatever happens, not having expectations from life. I think these all seem to be ingredients of the recipe. One ingredient I have seen you use a lot is art, poetry, and music, and maybe a little bit about that, about your passion for all of that.
Yeah, so I think poetry has been something that has been uh, like a DNA.
Hmm.
Family, we have grown up with. I mean, I have attended shairas at the age of 4. The whole night was shairas. My father just stage secretary, and with Pakistan and India, mushaira would happen. And we were allowed to come there and listen and whatever you understood. And my own eldest brother is a great poet, and now my younger sister has also just published her poetry. So I think the way the poetry and the English literature and Hindi literature was discussed in our family is something that you grew up with, and also the music, and so the we were all art students, even my brothers and all, IAS and all these kind of branches that we went to. It's not as if science was given more importance. So to me, I think the poetry is even today, whenever I'm feeling something, is when I flow in poetry. So I will tell you what I wrote in the morning, and that might
Sure.
tell you something about my own philosophy of life. Uh,
Okay, Irshad.
yeah. So the sun, red, glowing. This is when I saw the sunrise in the morning. The sun, red, glowing, spreading its color all over the sky. Even clouds are turning pink, as if blushing after making love. And then moon takes over in all its cool glory, spreading magic, the parched soul, white calming the world, creating vibes, giving life to lovers. I wait at an edge for you. The hot sun and the cool moon, both are you. I wish for miracles always.
Hmm. Beautiful. Beautiful.
So, and for me, my poetry is not only mine, but also I'm quite impacted by David White and Maya Angelou's poetry.
Sure.
And that her phenomenal woman is something that makes so much sense to me, you
Hmm.
know. And so many times, even in my labs or my workspace, suddenly when I see something emerging, for me it comes out in the form of a poem, and I'll immediately write it, and then I read out, and that becomes one of the great interventions because there's something it has captured the essence of what was happening. But you'll be surprised that I don't edit my poetry.
It's whatever came the first time round.
I just spontaneously write whatever I write, good, bad, ugly, and I go with it.
Hmm.
Somewhere editing means really almost like corrupting the process to make it perfect.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So
So
I
flowing with
think
the
I have
poetry. Yeah.
aversion to perfection.
Aversion to perfection. That's nice, and maybe that
Yeah,
allows for a certain flow and spontaneity. In your poem, I sorry, you were saying something, Sushma.
yeah,
In your poem I picked waiting for you. I think just reminds me of this whole role of love and romance and flirting and where does love and wisdom, I think just share a bit about love and wisdom. What is your sense of love and wisdom?
good topic. So as you were talking, it struck me that when we were talking about the age, I think I'm a incorrigibly romantic person. I was also given to a lot of these romantic poets, Keats, Shelley, all that period. And so to me, love is the most potent thing in life. How everybody is actually looking for love, romance. And the romance is not only just candlelight and this kind of thing. Uh, Romance in nature, the romance in trees. It's like a whole world. It's so to me, it's possibilities that can happen. And and I don't have any. You see, people get very bound by uh, traditions and again, what will people say, kind of. So whereas I love a lover, so I must have supported so many people who were in love, and their parents were not agreeing and things like that. I became their big champion because why would people want to stop two people who are in love? I don't understand the logic behind whatever logic they may offer me. And I'm all for the such people who have risked their heart to be with someone else. So I have done many of these kinds of things, even help some people to elope and do whatever, because to me, love is such a gift, not only between a man and a woman, but love in any form,
Mm, mm.
in any form. It is, and qualifying some love as uh, pure and some love as not pure. You know, I don't agree with it because to me, that love, that moment when you utter these words to somebody, it is the whole world has come together to say something. It is
Wow.
really,
Wow, wow. The moment you say love, the whole world has come together to say something. Love it.
yes,
Yeah.
at that moment you are really speaking out on behalf of I don't know how many other people as well. So, so to me, I remember, there's a poetry book called Kanupriya. I don't know if you're, it was written by Dharamveer Bharti. It's about Radha's love for Kana, for Krishna. One of the best poetries that I've ever come across. And it so happened when I had just come to Bombay that he, Dharamveer Bharti was at that time editor of Dharamjuk. And I don't remember now how I managed to get a meeting with him. So I went to meet him in the Times of India building. And so I had quite a detailed conversation with him. My one question to him was, how could you write such beautiful poetry from Radha's perspective, you being a man? So he looked at me in very puzzled kind of a way. And then he said, you know what? I have loved a woman,
Mm,
what a woman feels. And that floored me. And very recently, this Kanupriya was staged in Prithvi. So of course, I had to go. I went, and as luck could have it, the woman he fell in love with, and he married later on and left his wife, she was present in the audience.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, and they called her on the stage because it was all about Dharamveer Bharti and his poetry and all that. And it was such a, and the way she spoke also, I could understand why he was in love with her at that time. And now Dharamveer Bharti is no more. But to me, I think my understanding or my appreciation of love is from some of these kinds of things that have happened, you know. So, so to me, also a dialogue in one of the books, We the Living, which is Ayn Rand, and that Kira in the end almost the way he accosts the person that she was having an affair with, and the way she talks about that there's nothing wrong in telling you lies because I love the other man.
Mm,
I
mm,
do anything for him. So to me, this whole this to me is a romantic part of that that you can think about love in this kind of a fashion. And I think this love is something that makes me want to continue to work.
Hmm.
My love for people, my love for human beings, my love for what emerges, and the passion. So I
Wow.
don't know that.
Yes, yes. But Sush, I think the related question that's coming to me is there is also in human beings so much suffering, and I see so much of it as avoidable suffering. Like they could have avoided it with some better clarity, some decisions. And this may sound like a philosophical question, but I still want to bring it, having worked with so many people. Really, why are we suffering, and why is there so much suffering that could have just been avoided? Like, what are we not doing right or seeing right that there is suffering in love, but in life in general also? And working with so many people now, having worked with so many people, maybe be good to hear your reflection. Why is the suffering really? Why is there avoidable suffering?
I mean, it's like you don't go to the hospital when you know there is a problem
Hmm.
because you don't want to uh, know the truth. If but you continue to suffer anyways, whatever is bothering. So there is this suffering is more from the fears that we have. That's why we avoid. We don't know what will happen. And but once you own it up, for example, that once you decide to go to the doctor, I'm taking that as an example, and the doctor tells you you have this problem. Yeah. So you might deny in the beginning, but later on that reality strikes. And the moment you acknowledge it and accept it, your ability to handle it becomes very different. It's almost like uh, it's like a miracle is happening in front of
The
you. You never
moment you
knew.
acknowledge, the moment you acknowledge your trouble itself.
So to me, it's like uh, we are afraid of acknowledging and accepting, and it's not easy also to acknowledge all our frailties and the kind of expectations we have from life. You know, and many times we are ready to suffer some stupid stuff and not call it quits. You know? So it's also suffering is how we define the suffering. What is suffering? I don't know. Because if you love, suffering is part of
Hmm. The whole package deal.
it. It's the package.
I think a lot of
That,
times we're trying to just get the upside of it, but not take the whole package, and then we wonder why is suffering coming along. I guess rather than signing up for the whole thing.
yeah. So, so you want to, therefore, people many times there, I have come across so many people who never fall in love, who don't understand intimacy at all.
Because they're playing it safe.
Yeah. So they remain only at a very transactional level with people and deny themselves the possibility of knowing themselves and others in a very deep way.
Which happens,
So,
you're saying, when you love, right? Knowing yourself, knowing the other, and love as a pathway to that.
absolutely. Love, values, all kinds of stuff that is there, fears, all are part of knowing myself.
And meeting life fully. I think that's what I'm hearing from you through since when we started uh, meeting
Absolutely.
life really fully. Great.
So,
I think just one last thing that is coming to me, and then we can open this to the audience. I have seen you deal with power really well. I've seen you as one of the most powerful women and powerful human beings. Why should I say only human woman? Uh, power as a theme is something that people struggle with, and I've seen you hold it with ease. And really just wondering if there's anything around power and not being oppressed by it, being able to use it wisely. Like we all struggle with authority, we struggle with power. So, any final things that you have on power that you would like to share?
I think, fortunately for me, I have been a rebel all my life. So authority did not matter, really, because I always rebelled against anybody trying to control me or do whatever. And so, therefore, to me, the only thing I learned was that power is only who you are. But I remember there was a time when I used to think that degrees, getting degrees or that kind of certification is not going to give you any power. Because if you're not good at your art, no certification can help you. So I used to be very proud of saying that I don't care for certification and I never would go for certification just because it's needed. The people have to experience it. So I think the power, and today also I'm even more, at that time it was my uh, childlikeness and more spontaneity that was defining that. So I used to not even say, even in my profile, you know, as to what all I do. And I've seen people's cards and their profiles, which are write so many things. And to me, that's my past presence. Okay, that can give you credit only for a little while. It's not for more than that. So I think the more we recognize that my voice, my being, my way of looking, my way of my sensing, this is my power. The way I show up, that's the power. That's the real power. Nobody can take it away. When you have a role power, today you have, tomorrow you may not have.
Hmm, hmm,
It's
hmm.
going to go away. So
Right.
many people, after retirement, they feel very empty. So suddenly, people have stopped paying their respects to them. So, so I think early on, I don't know why and how, maybe I also grew up in a family where my eldest brother always defied Congress, and all, he was quite an activist social. And so therefore, whole process of inqilab zindabad kind of a thing, that freedom, if you can be free fully, that's your real power.
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
How do you live? And that's a huge one. Freedom is not by being in a democracy and all that. Freedom is also from whole lot of boundaries that you have put within yourself. So so I think power is a beautiful process, but power can corrupt easily. But powerlessness corrupts more.
Wow. Power corrupts, but powerlessness corrupts even more. That's
Because then you become dependent, you're victim, and everybody else you can blame, all kinds of stuff that happens. So, to me, taking responsibility for who you are, what you want to be, you know, I think if we can help children develop that early on,
yeah,
there'll be less suffering in the world.
yeah.
Because
Sure. Yeah, I think also just one thing that it evokes in me is we spoke about the owning your greatness, but also owning your mediocrity. And I think in power and in who am I, what I'm hearing is a full embrace of yourself and almost like another form of love, right? Self love, a full embrace of who am I, and then from that space having freedom. I think that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, this whole words, mediocrity, brilliant, you know, these are the words that create that power problem. Well, because we are judging, constantly judging. We are judging ourselves. So, to my mind, there's nothing called mediocrity, frankly, or brilliance. So whatever you do, whatever the way you do, and there's more that is possible that you can do if you look at it. So I become passionate about the best version of myself and not judging from so many other.
Hmm.
And then, then these words itself have defined our social reality.
Sure.
So nobody wants to embrace mediocrity. While the world runs on mediocre people, actually, you really see who are ready to. I mean, today I had gone for the vaccine, and the number of people who were holding the space there, giving the vaccine, and young people, and it's not an easy job to do. Injection after injection, can you imagine? It's only when uh, they are ready to do this kind of stuff that people like us can live.
Hmm. Yes. Yes. Yes.
So I don't think they are brilliant people. They are not mediocre people.
Get it. Right. And these evaluations probably trap us into being a certain way. And I think it comes back to what you were saying in terms of what other people think, because these are judgments, evaluations, and so on. When one
Yeah.
feels one has lived a life by 40, at the age of 40, I'm already feeling like I have lived out my life. How do I find a reason to live?
Yeah. So one thing that strikes me is that probably the person is doing a lot of stuff that is not her or his passion, and so therefore that can tire you down.
Not following your passion can tire you. Yeah.
So so high time to redefine what I really want and what gives me joy, not what is my responsibility. This responsibility business is a killing business.
So, what gives me joy?
Yeah, what you want, what you enjoy. So when you enjoy, you will find that others also really enjoy
Sure.
living with you. So at the age of 40, if you are getting tired, then I mean, I just got actually message from one person who attended one of my programs, and she was a very senior person in her organization, and she has been making a lot of decisions after that. Today she wrote that I've decided to leave my job totally. I don't know what I will do, but I've decided this is not what I want. And I was very surprised, really, because she was quite a corporate person. And so to me, I think there are many friends of mine, who are much younger than me, and they always say to me that from where do you get your energy? I get tired at the end of the day, but you never seem to be tired. I'm not tired because I really love what I'm doing. Really, I don't understand the business of tiredness. So I think I made the right choice from the beginning to get into this field, which is giving me continuously new learning and new understanding. But but at the age of 40, I think the life and the intuition is telling you it's now time to spread and expand yourself, to do
Beautiful.
something, which is so much more fun.
Great. Thank you for that. Kejal has a question. What would you say to your 20-year-old self?
I would say be even more fearless and be even more spontaneous and dive in.
Be more spontaneous, be more fearless, dive in.
Yeah, and flirt with life.
Flirt with life. I love that. Can you share a bit more about flirt with life? How does one flirt with life? I know flirt with women, but I know flirt with life.
Yeah, flirt with life is really treating it carelessly, not really uh, being bogged down by life itself, as if living life is I mean, one has to ultimately die, that's okay. But this flirting with life is that carefreeness and what do we do in flirting? It's just a sense of joy, naughtiness, that mischief, nothing more than that. And the life deserves only that. It's like the wind comes and blows and your hair is all over the place. It's flirting with you. So that's what I would say. And if the person, if it is my 20-year-old, I would certainly say even more of, at that time I was little, although I had started teaching in the college at that time. By that time, but I think but to my 18, 19 years old, I would say, let go.
Let go. Nice. And there's another one called What Would You Say to Your 35-year-old self? And I'm guessing at 35, there is family, there is responsibilities, a little bit of that. So I'm wondering if the same thing that you would tell your 20-year-old self, or at 35, some other advice for a 35-year-old.
Yeah, I would say, well done. It has been great, great joyride. Never expected all that happened. That was never my ambition. I would just say you just here's to what you created.
Cheers to what you created. Lovely. Yes, I think celebration is another theme. We didn't explore it much, but I think just cheers
Yeah,
and
yeah.
celebrating. I see you celebrating all the time, choosing every occasion and just being in a state of celebration, which is also, I think, such a joy.
And with wine or with no wine. I don't
Wine or no wine, there's always a celebration. So,
need any stimulus for that because you need to feel that sense of celebrating. You know, most of the people um, they wait for the right opportunity to celebrate. And for me, even the first, I remember when first time my husband got to, he was going to go to London, and that was the first foreign trip. And he came to tell me in my office, and I was over the moon. I was so thrilled. And I told him, I said, okay, let's go for dinner and let's go for a long drive. And he says, look, 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 no, not yet. Let everything happen officially. I say, and he says, because in our company, even at the last minute from the plane, they can call them back and you won't go. I said, it's okay. If it doesn't happen, then we will cry over it. But just now, we are
let's
so
celebrate.
happy. And to me, the present moment is where all celebration is. It's not to be stored for some future purpose.
Beautiful, beautiful. The
The
present is
joy
well
is in the
celebrated.
moment.
Yes.
That sense, that you just want to jump and not bother about who all is watching and
Beautiful.
or just dance. So I think that's the spirit to celebrate. Some of my, I know some of the people, who buy new clothes and they keep it for some real occasion to have. And for me, it is like if I buy yesterday, today I will wear it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't wait. So I may never have clothes, which should be on a special kind of a space. And I still remember there was very unfortunate, this friend of mine, he was in Moscow, he suddenly died. And whenever I used to go there, and she would always take out some new clothes for me to wear. I said, but you haven't even worn it. She said, no, no, you wear it. I will take time to wear. And when she died, there were so many new unworn clothes.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how I felt. I, what is there to not to enjoy today and to wait for that real tomorrow to come? That's not my philosophy of life.
Sure, sure. Yes, I think seize the day, seize the moment,